Let's. This meeting is officially being recorded. Is Diane Matias? Are you here as well?
Hey Jason, yeah, I'm here.
Diane.
Okay. Now it's
Hey,
official.
Diane.
Now
Hey
we can start.
everyone.
Do you want to welcome our players that are getting ready for L1s and all the summer
Yeah,
tournaments planned?
yeah. Hello everyone. My name is Diane Matias. I'm the director of junior tennis for USTA SoCal. Thank you all so much for joining us on our call tonight. We have an amazing panel. We're really excited to get the conversation going. Um, Paul Annacone and Paul Goldstein, thank you all for joining. Karen, Joel, and Michael, we appreciate your time. And Jason, just a huge shout out to you for organizing this webinar for our SoCal families. Without further said, Jason, go ahead and take the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. The topic tonight is we're going to be discussing playing on different surfaces, playing in different conditions, because now that the kids are out of school, we're going to be traveling around the country, traveling out of our home courts, getting away from our comfort zone. And so we're going to talk about what do we do mentally, physically, strategically in order to better prepare ourselves to be able to play in those kind of conditions. And with that, we have four amazing panelists. They all give us kind of a unique perspective on exactly what we can do in order to achieve that goal. So first off, anybody who plays tennis in the Valley knows Joel Decay. Joel and Cecil started up TMX, but before that, Joel was Cecil's traveling physio, and he traveled with Cecil along with some other esteemed pros throughout the country, getting players ready to be able to play on the tour with all the demanding conditions. He knows exactly how to build the footwork, core strength, the stamina that players need to survive in these hot summer months. So with that, Joel, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor. And, you know, also Cecil would be here as well, except he's on a trip to the Philippines right now to have his induction to the Philippines Hall of Fame. So it's a pretty
Good
exciting
Oh,
moment.
though.
But he
um,
gives his regards, and glad that tennis mechanics can be a part of this panel.
Please tell him congrats.
amazing. Congrats.
Well, definitely.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge.
It is.
Next up is we have Karen Ronney, and Karen is a jack of all trades when it comes to the tennis world. She's a legendary figure in Southern California. She's USTA tennis surface representative. She is the marketing director for USTA SoCal Foundation. She's USPTA certified. She's PTR certified. She's USTA coaching certified. She recently was nominated the USPTA High School Coach of the Year. So we're interested in getting her perspective on the college recruiting process, adapting to competitive pressure over these summer months. We're hoping to get her perspective for the parents in particular on how they can build a better support system for their kids out in the tour full time, this summer months without having to worry about the school and how to be able to navigate that process. So Karen, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the call as well.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say, and it's exciting. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then next, good friend Paul Goldstein. We were just figuring out that we played college at the same time. He was at Stanford. He won 4 NCAA championships in a row. One year, they only lost 3 dual matches, 173-3 in that one year. So the most dominating college team in the history of college athletics, maybe of any sport. And then he parlayed that into a very successful professional career, beat Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open. He top 60 in the world, ATP, and then he took over Stanford as the head coach, and amazing winning percentage there. They were high as number 3 earlier this year. They finished number 18 in the country this year. So he's done his thing on the pro side and the college side, and now he's doing it as a coach. So, we're looking forward to getting Paul's perspective on exactly what our players can do out on the tour to be able to look better in the eyes of these college coaches that will be recruiting and scouting this summer. So Paul, thank you for finding time.
Jason, awesome to be with you. Thrilled to be a small part of this evening.
Thank you so much. And last and certainly not least, a person who definitely does not need an introduction, International Tennis Hall of Famer, won the 1989 Roland Garros after just starting to play on clay in 1988, which we just found out. He made another three Grand Slam finals, reached number 2 in the world, and he's back on the tour. He's working with SoCal's Lerner Tien, and Lerner is in the top 30 in the world. He'll be seated at Wimbledon. Michael will be there with him. Looking forward to getting Michael's perspective on mental toughness, how to transition from fast hard courts to the slow clay. So thank you, Michael, for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here, and Southern California is where I grew up playing tennis. So if I can, encourage some of these young kids to go out there and strut their stuff, even more so on the clay. We already know they can do it on the hard courts, but if they can do it even more so on the clay and gain that experience, I'd love to be able to help.
I'm ready to dust them off. You inspired me. I'm ready to go. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul Annacone. And Paul Annacone has taken some time out from his busy summer season. Taylor Fritz just made finals of the Boss Open in Stuttgart. Paul certainly knows a thing or two about transitioning from slow to hard to faster courts. So interested in getting his perspective. But Paul, thank you again for making time in your busy summer season to be able to lead this discussion. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And yeah, I know about it. I just couldn't do it, unfortunately, like Michael. I know what you're supposed to do. I just couldn't do it. So it's one of those things where it's like, do what I say, not what I do. So it's much easier that way. But
don't believe all of that.
in all seriousness, thanks, you guys. This is an amazing night, and it's too bad. I know everybody's pressed for time, but this is a great panel. And for all you parents and kids out there, to have this opportunity with the diversity of the folks on the panel, and all due respect to everybody, but especially Michael taking the time to do that. I know, Michael, you got a slammed schedule, so we'll start off. I just wanted to start off with a few minutes with you, because listening to your stories, Jason texted me, by the way, and he was like, do you think you can join the call? And I was like, dude, I've been here for 10 minutes just listening to Michael. I'm on the call. I want to give you a little bit of space. And some of the stuff you've already talked about, but I think it's really important to kind of circle back. You said when you won the French in '89, everyone, knew that you were going to be, all of the tennis minds knew you were going to be a great player. But how did you transition so quickly? What did you do that made yourself feel so comfortable on clay so quickly? And are there any key little notes you can tell parents so that kids don't feel like they don't have to totally overhaul their game?
Yeah.
Comfortable on a clay court.
Yeah. Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Jose Higueras. Jose is a phenomenal coach. Obviously, from Spanish descent, knows the surface better than any other surface there. He's just, semifinals at the French Open. I think one of the biggest things was that I had the tools on clay. I had the tools to play well on clay, the ability to move, the ability to stay patient, the ability to think my way through points. I just didn't know how to go about doing it on a surface that was different. The footing was different. The bounce was different. The bounce was higher. The angles were different. The speed was slower. I didn't know how to go about navigating that. And Jose taught me that, and taught me how to use the abilities that I already had and apply them to clay. I think one of the biggest things that SoCal juniors and SoCal players need to change first and foremost is the attitude. I think when they come out and they think to themselves, gosh, I'm on the clay. I'm not a clay court player. I'm probably not going to do great on this surface. You've kind of already written yourself off before you've even given yourself an opportunity, especially when you're going out and you're playing, national clay court titles, and you're playing against maybe kids from Florida who maybe have spent a lot more time on it. Believe it or not, Lerner kind of had that mentality at the very beginning part of this clay court season. I think last year was probably his first time really playing on clay, and I think he won maybe only just one main draw match. This year he had a pretty decent clay court season, actually won the title in Geneva, which was a great confidence booster. And I don't hear him complaining about the surface anymore. And, a lot of it is understanding that it is more chess-like. It is playing, maybe what would normally be 2 or 3 great shots on hard court could be 4 or 5 or 6 on clay. Navigating the bounces, I think, is also something that is very different. Everybody here who's grown up on hard courts, nobody has a problem taking the ball, early, or nobody has a problem taking the ball on the half volley off the quick bounce. You can't do it on clay. You get a little bit of a bad bounce, a little bit of an off bounce. The ball hits the line, as you guys know, it'll skip, it'll pop. And you try to take some of these balls that are, on the half volley, and you shank them. You don't get a good hit. Maybe you pop them. When you pop balls on clay, they sit more, and then guys can step up, and then they can start dictating you. They can start angling you. Before you know it, you're 10 feet back, and you're playing defensive tennis, and you're not used to doing that because you're a hardcore player. So, a lot of it is being able to navigate those different aspects. One is patience. One is being able to identify the bounce, knowing what you can and can't do on certain shots. And the other thing also, obviously, I think in a lot of aspects, actually, is the ability to be able to sometimes go forward, on shots whenever you possibly can. People don't understand that when a surface is slow, the more weight and the more you're able to get behind the ball, the heavier that ball becomes. And on clay, because of the way the ball bounces, it bounces higher with more topspin. That ball is a much heavier ball on this surface than it is on a hard court, and it's very different in that regard. I've also heard a lot of things about people that have grown up on hard courts. They saying, "Gosh, I don't know how to slide." Guess what? If I don't have to slide on clay, I don't slide. So I know a lot of guys are teaching, you got to slide into every single shot. You don't have to slide into every single shot. You will naturally slide. You'll start to get used to the footing. As long as you don't do it like Boris Becker, where you hit and then you slide, then you're going to have problems, because by the time you hit and then you take another second and a half to slide, you're way off the court and the ball's already going the other direction. That's a different problem. So you're obviously wanting to learn, if you're really moving toward a drop shot, you're moving toward a wide ball, you want to be able to slide. By the time that ball slides, you're hitting it so you can recover, immediately back, getting back into position. So there's a lot of these kind of things that I think, if we can kind of help kids and parents and coaches to understand that, that's already half the battle in becoming a better clay court player.
Yeah, all that stuff is so good. It's amazing. It seems to me like, and this is one of the things that impressed me so much when you played, even at a young age, you embraced all of the different variation of circumstances as an equation, not as you're a victim of them. It's like, how do I figure this out? And I think a lot of the kids and a lot of young players, and a lot of the pros on tour still are like, oh, woe is me. I hate the wind. I hate the sun. I hate this. I hate that. I hate, they don't figure out the equation. And it was interesting because after Lerner won in Geneva, I reached out to his dad and I just sent him a note and I said, Quan, congratulations. He goes, it's a miracle. After the Australian Open, Lerner could barely walk on a clay court. And and so my point and my question to you is, how do you get the kids to learn to understand, let the mind lead the body? It's about, how do you play your game on a different surface? Not, oh, this surface is bad. How do you get them to understand that you can apply your game on a different surface? And specifically, how did you do that with Lerner?
Well, I mean, I knew already what his record was last year on the clay. So in actuality, during the off season, for this past year, we didn't stay on the hard court the entire time. I got him on the clay. So I knew that because of the way this whole system is now with the Masters 1000s, I didn't have a clay court training block anymore, unless we purposely made it. We ended up having one because he didn't play Monte Carlo, didn't play Barcelona, but I didn't want to be able to try to kind of teach him how to play on clay and go through a lot of the different drills, a lot of the different movements while we were playing Houston, because it just doesn't make sense to be able to do that. So I took him down to the desert for a few days just to get on the clay, just to give him some introduction, just to give him a little bit of a get his feet wet into the mentality that he can play well on this surface, and some of the things, some of the adjustments that that he needs to make. But you're absolutely right. I don't think anybody needs to change their game in order to be able to play clay court tennis. I mean, you look at some of these French Open champions; they're not all baseliners, right? You've got a lot of great players that have won the French Open, serving and volleying, coming to the net, being very successful. I mean, you don't give yourself credit, right? You're not a baseliner, but you chipped and charged very effectively actually on clay. I know that for a fact. But you understood different things. You understood like, hey, if I can get these guys out of rhythm, guess what? They're not going to be able to push me around like they normally do. So you use your strengths and your abilities to make players uncomfortable. So whether that means, if you're a flat ball hitter, Lerner has a flat backhand. I said, some people say to me, you're not going to be able to get his backhand to work because he has a flat backhand. Well, no, it's not true. There's plenty of guys that have a flat backhand that do well. Zverev is a good example of that. Well, he doesn't hit heavy topspin like a Rafa. Well, there's plenty of guys that don't hit heavy topspin that hit more through the ball, and you find ways to make it work on different surfaces. It's just too hard at this stage, I think, to all of a sudden make such a drastic change. And the only surface that I would say would be a little bit different is grass, but not now. Back in the day, because back in the day, grass was very different than what grass is now. Grass now, the ball's slow, it bounces very high. Back in our day, when we played on the grass, it was very fast, very low bouncing, and it was very difficult to play from the back all the time. So you had to make some transition there to come in. But you're absolutely right. And if I were to give one piece of advice toward every single one of these junior players that are coming from Southern California to be able to play their best tennis on clay, whether they're hitting a heavy topspin, whether they're coming in, whether they're hitting flat, I will tell you one thing is to keep the ball deep. Because if you keep the ball deep on clay, I don't care who you play, no one's going to push you around. No one's going to dictate you if your ball is deep. People dictate you when your ball is short, and they dictate you when your ball is sitting. But if your ball is deep, they're having to beat you and push you from 4 to 8 feet behind the baseline. And it's not an easy thing to do on such a slow surface.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing. And so much of this, I always like to use the phrase, and I tell the parents in Southern Cal, a lot of coaches that I've done with things that I've done with Jason and Diane, I just tell the parents, one of the things that's most important early on is helping your kids understand their identity as a player, like who they are, like how do they play, because then it's much easier to teach and coach them. They know how they should play, and then you try to implement it on the different surfaces. You were kind of the king at that. And that's one of the things I was so amazed when you were a teenager, how able you were to go from clay to hard to even grass when it was drastically different. And you were able to impose your will without totally having a new identity. Is there a way to help a parent or to help coaches understand how to ingrain this identity in a player so that they get more self-assuredness and
Yeah.
when they're younger?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I really think it starts with your foundation, the foundation of how you like to play tennis, the foundation of what is the strength of your game, what makes you who you are. Work it from there, right? You continue to hone those abilities, you continue to hone those strengths. And what do you do with the other aspects? You keep working at it. It's almost like this one of these things where, you go from like 10 and unders to 12 and unders. And maybe when you're at the 10 and under, 12 and under division, guys are winning by hitting really high top spin balls and fencing guys on the back of the fence. So they're short. They can't get the ball anymore. But maybe that's your game at that particular time, but you can't just spend all that time continuing to play that style, because you're going to realize very quickly, once you get to 14s, once you get to 16s, that game doesn't work anymore. So it's one of these things where you need to constantly evolve. You need to constantly improve. You don't need to make drastic changes, but you need to continue to add to what you already do well.
Right.
And when you do that in drills, you do that in practice, you do that in matches, and you start getting more and more comfortable. Then, maybe you start off hitting, all your winners from the baseline. Let's say you take some time to work on being able to step in and maybe, hit some winners from inside the baseline. From there, you learn to take some of these balls that are short and take them and come in, add some volleys to it. You're going to start to realize, oh gosh, you know what? I hit these great baseline shots now that are short balls. Guess what? I actually don't need to volley great, because all the volleys are sitting for me, but
Yeah.
you're constantly working on all of those things so that when you do become a good volleyer, you're like, oh, wow, this is actually helpful on grass. If I can hit a decent volley on grass, it's actually even more effective, because the ball doesn't bounce that high. So what would normally be maybe a ball that somebody could get on hard court, or certainly on clay, they can't get because it's on grass and doesn't bounce as high. So, and you gain confidence by constantly improving and constantly getting better, strengthening your strengths, but then also working on your weaknesses. And this is something that I will encourage these kids that they have to do. And the reason why I'll tell you that you have to do this is because once one guy knows your strengths and weaknesses on tour, by the end of like 2 weeks to a month, everybody knows. Everybody knows. So if you're not constantly improving on those aspects of your game, you're going to start realizing, gosh, everyone's starting to play me the same way. Why? Especially nowadays, where it's so easy to get footage of guys playing. Now you have analytics, you have a lot of different other aspects of, strategic aspects of tennis. So the ability and the hard work that you put in to constantly be, improving, getting better, just so that people cannot exploit your game, and so that you can become a more and more effective player, not only against other styles, but also other surfaces.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. One of the things I find really interesting as I've watched Learner. You did such a great job yourself with your meteoric rise up the ranks. Learner's done the same thing. And I remember when you were young, and when you and Pete and Andre and Jim were doing so well. And I remember when Pete got to one in the world, Pete said to me, you know, it's way easier to get somewhere than it is to stay somewhere. If your goal is to, when he first won his first major, when he first got to one in the world. So that adaptation that you went through, and you got so comfortable so quickly at the top of the game. Lerner has had a meteoric rise thanks to everything that you've done, thanks to all the work from Eric Cortland, from Chris Grow, everybody on his team. Lerner's very comfortable in that environment. How do you get these kids comfortable as they go? I want to give them a preliminary look at as they go from junior tennis to college tennis, even if they don't play pro. How do you help them get comfortable?
Well, I think part of it is that you instill in them that they belong, because I think that when you instill that in them, that confidence grows. And we all know that confidence is one of belief, being able to go out there and play against the best players in the world. Confidence comes from being able to perform on a surface. You have to help them to believe that, yeah, you're good enough to play on this surface. You're good enough to win. You're good enough to beat the best players in the world. But you have to encourage them in that. And that's not just a coach's job. That's a parent's job. That's a fellow player's job. That's a friend's job.
Right.
And to be honest with you, that's each and every one of these kids' jobs themselves, because which is the voice that they're hearing the most? It's their own,
Right.
right? It's their own. The best players don't get to be the best because they came out on tour and all of a sudden they were like, I believe I'm the best. No, it's a process that everybody goes through. It's a process where you're winning matches, you're losing matches, but maybe the matches that you lose, you're gaining confidence because you walk off the court and you say, you know what, shoot, I lost that match, but you know what, I could have beat that guy, and your confidence grows. So I think a lot of it is who you surround yourself with. That becomes obviously very important. The hard work that you put into things. But I think that belief is very crucial. And I think that you've got certain coaches and people that can show you, what you're doing right or what maybe needs to change here and there. And then all of a sudden, little light bulbs go off. Like I would share different things with Learn and be like, I didn't think about that, or I didn't see it like that. So you give a little bit of a different perspective, and to be able to teach them, what works and why it works, and what doesn't work and why it doesn't work. But a lot of it's trial and error. But a lot of it is building this confidence and this belief. But it does help when a guy like Lerner is already extremely mentally, tough and extremely passionate about the game.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Look, I know you got to go. You've been unbelievably generous, but I got to ask you one last question that's going to be this to me, I think is the most important thing that people have to take to heart. I watched you from afar grow up. Your parents were unbelievably supportive. They were very helpful. It's such a challenging road, right? I mean, whether you're juniors, college, pro, you play in these tournaments, everybody loses every week except one person. So you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Any pearls of wisdom for the parents to help ingrain
Evelyn,
the
thank you.
talked about, to have them help ingrain the confidence, the belief, and the fact that the process will lead to the results? How did you do it with your folks, and what could you tell these kids, and what are you doing with your own kids now to help them have the self-belief to persevere through adversity?
Well, I mean, with my own kids, I'm actually quite lucky because, Lonnie's now starting to play some junior slams. Lonnie grew up in an atmosphere where she was already watching the best players in the world play. And that was during the time that I was coaching Kay. So, she's seen, all of the big courts. She's watched so many of Kay's, matches throughout the years. She's been around the best players in the world, in the player lounge, in the player restaurant. This is commonplace for her. And if you're young and you grow up in that environment, how do you not love the sport? My second daughter, Miley, is a golfer, but she has an appreciation for tennis. And then, our youngest, Micah, now is traveling with me, going to so many of the Learner's tournaments now. He is a tennis encyclopedia. I don't know how he got to be like that, but he knows all the stats. He knows all the names, whether you're singles, doubles, men, women. He knows so many of these players. He knows more players than I do. And he's just passionate about the game. But I think if I were to share with parents, and coaches, if you look at the very best players who have ever played the game, they have one commonality. Granted, they all work hard. They all play different styles, right? They all play different styles. But if you take a look at these guys, Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, Rafa, Andy Murray, on the men's side, McEnroe is a great example, Bjorn Borg. What do they have in common? They have a passion for the game. They're not up there playing for money. They're not up there playing for trophies. You think Novak's out there, busting his butt at 39 years old because he doesn't have enough? No, he's passionate about the game. So if you're a coach, if you're a player, if you are a parent, teach your children to have that and help them to be passionate about the game, help them to enjoy the game, recognize, days that maybe they're tired and don't need to go and put 4 hours of tennis, on that particular day. Find a balance between, working hard and also taking some time to rest. Make some of these practices and some of these opportunities to play, make them fun. You know, maybe put some type of thing that will motivate them. Find motivation. Find people that they enjoy to be around or to practice with or to train with. But all of these great champions, they are passionate about the game. And when you're passionate about something, guess what? Hard work doesn't seem like hard work anymore
Yeah.
because you love it. You love it, and you will rise and get to be able to you'll be able to get the most out of your game. There's no question because you have that passion, and you'll be open to trying new things because you're like, oh, if I try new things, guess what? I'll become better. I'm going to enjoy the sport even more. And, you know, is it a great feeling to be able to go out there and play on the grandest stages? Yes, absolutely. But, I think it's great from a fan perspective to be able to watch players out there not only playing unbelievable tennis, but enjoying themselves in the process. And those are the guys that, in my mind, play the best tennis and get the most out of it.
No, that's awesome. No, I agree. I mean, my firsthand experience is the same thing. End of my career, I had a million injuries. I was tired of playing. My back was killing me. I couldn't find any fun anymore. Pete had his big drought. At the end of his career, he kind of changed the way he practiced. We practiced less, tried to have a little bit more fun.
Mm-hmm.
End of Roger's career, Roger just loved tennis. He
Yeah.
loved balls.
Yeah.
He just goes out and hits and that. So you have to find a way to keep that. So someone asked, how do you teach passion? You teach passion by understanding who your child is, what makes them happy, what gives them enjoyment, and you try to patent that and turn that into a habit.
Yeah.
So that whether they're winning or losing, they
Yeah.
can keep that going, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that there's one also really important thing is that I think as a parent, when your child walks off the court, whether they've won that match, whether they've lost that match, they need to know that your love doesn't change for them.
100%. They're the balancer. I like to say parents
Yes.
balancers. You guys are the
Yes. And you think about it, at the end of the day, I mean, junior tennis is important and it feels like monumentous when you're there. But 6 months from now, are you really going to remember that, that L3 tournament? You're probably not.
balancers.
You know what I mean? So try to keep a perspective of everything in the long term. And remember, I mean, we want to be able to play tennis for a lifetime. But at the same time, like, your relationships as family, I mean, those last way longer, than junior tennis, professional tennis. But I tell you what, for me to know, like, I always have my parents' support, whether I've won or whether I've lost, it gave me the freedom to be able to go out there and play. I didn't have to like miss a shot and then like look over to my mom and dad or see what their reaction was. And you see that sometimes, right? But for me, it was freeing. It was, I knew I could walk off the court, and my mom and dad were going to love me no matter what, and that wasn't going to change.
No, that's awesome. Michael, we can't thank you enough. I mean, this is awesome. This is so valuable, folks. I hope you guys appreciate this. Michael, good luck to Lerner. Obviously, we're all big fans. I've known him since he's been 13, watched him at Carson for so many years. Great to see you at the helm helping him. He's doing an amazing job. Your three kids wish you all the health and happiness, and your bride in the world. And hopefully I'll see you at Wimbledon. If not,
Okay.
I'll see you this summer at some point. But
Sounds great.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Michael. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
All right.
All right, Jason. Jason,
Where do we go from here?
Alan,
Who do we do
Alan
here?
Valuable. Look, folks, all I can tell you is, I hope everybody was taking notes. I got more scribbles down here than, it's just, and it's all simple, basic stuff. So to be able to take that and use it is incredibly good and incredibly invaluable because so many things he's been through. I got to watch. I was kind of retiring as he was starting to become Michael Chang, and I got to watch him play against Pete. I think Michael and I played once or twice. and I'm sure I didn't win, but I think we played. So I got to see him mature. But the great part about tennis is you have experts like Michael, and now we have three more experts in different areas as well that can add so much to it, Jason. I think this is going to be really important in terms of putting the whipped cream on top of the apple pie that was Michael Chang, and I think that's what we got now.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, I guess, at this point, let's put it into action, right? So now these parents are on the line. They want to know what's some tangible stuff because we looked at it conceptually. What can we do? And so, maybe start off with Joel, maybe, and let's talk about the physical
Absolutely.
aspect
Yeah, yeah, Joel.
on what we can do.
Yeah, Joel, I want to ask you about some of the stuff Michael talked about, like learning how to play his own game on a clay court, in terms of the movement, shot selection stuff. What should kids learn to do so that they can adapt to the surface changes? How do they kind of prepare their mind and body so that they can adapt pretty seamlessly from one surface to another as the summers progress and the seasons change and the surfaces change?
It's interesting just listening to everything that Michael said, and it's like, okay, he's pretty much answering all the questions that I'm about to say. So it might sound a little repetitive, but one of the main things is that I think the biggest mistake most players make when they go on a clay surface, and being from California, is approaching the clay court and playing like it's a hard court. And I think that's the first thing we have to identify. So it's not, we have to teach that clay isn't just a different surface; it's a different movement system that we have to understand. So, on the hard court, we're constantly stopping and starting. On the hard court, it's easier to do that. Whereas on the clay, the best players learn how to absorb the force, slide in through their movement. Like Michael said, I'm glad he pointed out that they're going to
That's
slide into a shot, whereas if you try and hit your shot and slide after, you're going to lose time. And we're trying to teach all of our players to be efficient. So that means there's a lot of preparation that we have to take account of, and that is going to start weeks before the tournament. If there's three key areas to work on is lateral strength, deceleration control, and balance, right? And some of our favorite drills include, we like to use the slide board, or we do a shuffle to slide progression, and teaching them, and how to understand those movements and how to keep their balance. So that's what we do, a lot of single leg balance. It's interesting that I work with a few kids on single leg balance, just on a Bosu ball or just on flat ground, where you tap them over and then they just come back. They reset themselves. Having a lot of things like hip crossover recovery drills, and then just spending a lot of time teaching them, especially when you're going to a surface like the clay court. Kids are going to learn quick that you're going to have to lower your center of gravity a lot more to have control. So from a physical standpoint, that means you've got to have strong glutes, adductors, hamstrings, and core stability. They're all critical pieces, and that help control your body during long slides and recovery moments. So, last thing I want to say. So you want to build movement patterns first, for a lot of our players, and then introduce them to the surface, and then you can develop strength through momentum, and then when they have that confidence to slide, they move more efficiently. Great things start to happen. So that's kind of our experience, and we're fortunate at Burbank to have two hard true courts. They're not the best courts, but it's something we can start and introduce them to.
Yeah, I think the two words that resonate with me that sum up what you're talking about really are routine and
Right.
habits. You create that stuff by doing it. You don't all of a sudden walk on the match court and learn how to do those
Right.
things. you have to create the routines and the habits off court in training, and it sounds like you offer that to go from one surface to the next. And the kids have to get used to it. Karen, one of the things that I've noticed, and I wanted to ask you about this, one of the things that I've noticed with kids is kind of how frustrated they can get when they go from one surface to another, especially hard to clay, Karen, where it's harder to finish the points. They get frustrated because they can't finish the point. Their offensive shots get neutralized or slowed down. Karen, is there a way to help kind of neutralize the negativity that can seep in or the belief that it may just take one more shot or two?
Absolutely. I think it's a mindset. So you guys have all recapped some amazing comments and strategies on dealing with the actual surface, understanding the bounce. The first would my thought would be understand the surface. If you're transitioning from hard to clay, you're going to play more balls. So what do you need? You need more patience. So you're creating a mindset of first strike, ending the ball quickly to I might have to hit more than the 4 balls. I might have to hit 8 or 10 balls. So patience and adaptability. And what Michael said was really critical in that he hit when he works with his players, understanding their strengths. So kids can have more patience if they know who they are and what they bring to the table. So when you're working with your players, like Joel just said, well in advance, what are their strengths? What strategies, what patterns work well for them? Know those before going in, I mean, months, if not years in advance. And then finally, the biggest thing I think hard court players need to adapt is mental flexibility. If plan A isn't working, you got to have a plan B. If plan B isn't working and your opponent's movement and balance and footwork is off the charts laterally, you got to pull him or her off the baseline. Now what are you going to do? Oh, that's not working. Well, maybe I'm going to come into I'm going to chip and charge, coming behind that return. Maybe I'm going to serve and volley. So I think how do you negate that frustration? You got to have a lot of plans, and you go from one to the other until you find something that works.
Mhm.
I think that's mental mindset prep in addition to all the amazing fitness, footwork, training experience. The mental piece of it is probably at this point the biggest piece of it because
It's, al- it's
everybody's great at this level.
Yeah, it
So
seems
what's the
a
difference?
little bit like the acceptance, right? There's just certain things you just have to accept. It doesn't make them, you don't have to judge whether they're good or bad. They just are. And then how do you adapt to that? Is that the right kind of mind?
Exactly. You ask yourself a better question, not why isn't this working or why is my game not off? Okay, how can I adapt? What can I do better? Ask a different question. Accept it's going to be different. It's going to be harder. You might have to hit more balls. Now, what's the better question to ask yourself? That's the mental training that goes in on the courts before you even get to the tournament.
Yeah, that's awesome. Paul, you've had to deal with this. Well, you dealt with that as a player, obviously, the ability to adjust and change and adapt and try to, and you were always pretty sound mentally. I always felt like you were one of the guys that also had a really good tennis IQ. At the highest levels in college, when you get a pretty formed player, how do you talk to them about the ability to adjust and adapt, whether it be to a slower hard court or perhaps some tournaments outside the collegiate level that they're going to be playing? How do you use that in your kind of education to the players that you deal with at school?
Well, it's been so fun listening to everybody and appreciate you guys having me. I'll start with maybe just some of my experiences as a player and fascinating listening to what Joel had to say on the physical side, what Michael had to say on the strategic and tactical side. But one of the things that really resonated with me, Paul, was, talking about not having to completely overhaul your game when making the adjustment from hard to clay. Michael also talked about having an identity and making sure you're staying with that. All the lessons that Michael and Joel and Karen have shared on the transition are spot on. But I have a story when I went to play my first red clay court tournament in Europe, in which I really got away from my identity. And so it was the first time I got invited by the USTA to go over play on the red clay. I'd played some hard true in the States. And I was excited about it. And my junior coach was Swedish and grew up on the clay. And so I spent 3, 4 weeks practicing how to play clay court tennis. And I went over to Europe and my first round match, I was a favorite to win that match. And I was so committed to playing clay court tennis at the very beginning of the match that after about 25, 30 minutes, I found myself down 4-0. And I hadn't been competing at all. I'd just been trying to play clay court tennis. I had overhauled my game to try to play clay court tennis. And finally, at 4-0 down, I was like, you know what? I can't lose my identity completely, and I still have to trust who I am as a player. And I was able to turn that match around, and that was first round, and ended up making it all the way to the finals. But the point is, all the strategic adjustments that need to be made are spot on, but it's not a complete overhaul.
Mm-mm.
You have to maintain your identity. I don't care who you are, there are things that you do best. And the point of a mano encounter, and I see Muhammad Ali on your back wall there, Paul, is how often can I impose my strength on my opponent and make them deal with what I do best? And so I don't think you can ever get away with that, no matter what, get away from that, no matter what surface you're playing on. Um, and then I guess I'd say from a coaching standpoint, uh, gosh, one of the big changes that I think are evolutions of the game is just how physical the game has become. And so all the things that Joel is talking about, I can tell you at the end of our season this year with our team, we talked about as a team how we want to come in next year, a more physical team, and that was our priority over the summer. And sure enough, after our final team meeting of the year, 5 days later, the French Open starts, and on the men's side, the number of 5-hour, 5-set matches that occurred, just validating the point of how physical this game is, was, there were double digit, 4.5, 5-hour matches. And so this sport has become so physical on both the men's and women's side. And so we're really emphasizing that within our program now.
Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. It's just so, and it's a great lead into my next question, which is how do you deal with that with the kids? How do you deal with that with young kids, and how do you get them prepped? And so let's talk a little bit about that. And Joel, Joel, we go in the summer in the States here, hard courts, clay courts, hard courts, and the humidity can be brutal. Joel, what do in terms of trying to have a macro and a micro picture for players in terms of dealing with heat, humidity, dehydration, rehydration, rest and recovery. What is like the top of the line program look like for a kid, for an adolescent playing junior level tournaments during the summer months when it's that hot, Joel? What would you suggest that looks like?
So, when we have this discussion all the time, especially now that we're starting our summer programs, and one of the biggest things is having a 48-hour hydration, start. So it doesn't start just the day of, and having electrolytes, and making sure the kids aren't having too many sugars, or like, because we have kids, so they like to go to the cafe, and sometimes they'll get an acai bowl, or some gummy bears, which I'm not a big fan of, but really emphasizing on hydration, sleep, recovery, proper nutrition before and after matches, having proper enough carbohydrates and proteins within that 30 minutes. So for most, the kids, they're probably about, uh, let's say 50 to 100 pounds, depending on the age. So we don't want to overload them with protein either, but just understanding that we have to have just a consistency in just not chugging water all at once, and putting all of that together.
Is it dangerous to only have water, Joel? I mean, should they, is there a way to figure out what kind of, minerals they should have, what kind of electrolytes should be? I mean, is there any way a parent with no educational background can know where do they go to get the right balance of electrolytes to help their kids in the summer?
I mean, one of the, there's so many different products out now. And I think one of the biggest things is just looking at, the ingredients. It's as simple as looking at, are there ingredients that are that are harmful. There are a lot of sugars, and I think that's the biggest thing is the sugars. Um, you know, we want something that's natural. We want something that that at least tastes good too, right? And but the main thing is there's nothing that can beat just good old fashioned just hydration, having at 48 hours, and making sure you're constantly monitoring your own system as well. Like say monitoring your urine color. If your urine color is a lot darker, that means you're pretty dehydrated. If the lighter it is, the more dehydrated the more hydrated you are.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I had a experience back in 2016. Cecil and I we're running our camps. This was about our 4 years into it, and we put a lot into it. Even I have to, let the coaches know because they're on court as well.
Yeah.
And 2 months before my wedding, I had gotten sick. I had caught mono, and I ended up in the ER. And I was completely trying to change my diet, eliminate sugars, creams, and everything. I was still having coffee, but worst thing it's a diuretic. So I was losing a lot of water. um, and it landed me in, and not to give anybody graphics, but I was urinating almost like a dark color, coffee, and something's wrong. And so quickly, from that point on, after getting out of the hospital, I had 2 IVs, and thankfully I was fine. And I had a renal acute renal infection. So luckily, I was able to recover from that. But ever since then, I'm a big advocate of having water. So one of the biggest things I always say, these kids carry around a 36 to 48 ounce of water. They said, look, you have to have as much as you weigh, you should be drinking that. So if you weigh 75 pounds, you should have at least 75 ounces of water throughout the time, and in this weather. So that's one of the biggest things, and I'm passionate about
Yeah.
about getting people to understand that.
Yeah, hydration part is so important. And I think that a lot of the stuff also it leans on you mentally, and it also leans on your energy, whether it's self-prescribed by kind of talking yourself into fear factors or panic. And Karen, when the players get to these national tournaments, they've got to navigate multiple matches a day oftentimes. And when you combine the back-to-back days from the elements, and you have to kind of manage the physical part, the emotional part, and also the nutritional part. How do you help? Are there key things that, Karen, that you can help the kids kind of focus on so that they're not, because all those things contribute to you being flat too, so that they're not flat after a day like that and they can sustain their energy?
Yes. So, spot on about food, about sleep. Sleep is your recovery. It's your body's capacity to heal itself from hard days of matches and training. So I would even say not just a couple 48 hour, I would say weeks and months in advance of a big event. Have a consistent training schedule, get a lot of sleep, eat well, hydrate yourself well, so the body is used to or will be able to withstand a lot of intense pressure. Secondarily, from a parent perspective, a lot of parents don't understand what their kids can and cannot tolerate. So maybe late in the game, you might figure out you might be giving your child a protein chocolate milk drink after a match, but then he or she tells you they have stomach aches. They could be lactose intolerant. Listen, if they're not feeling well with what they're eating during training, it's not going to work during a tournament. So before you ever get to that top level event, know what your kid, your student, your player you're coaching can and cannot tolerate. So fresh fruit, always a win. You have some perhaps a granola type of a bar that travels well, low sugar, nothing chocolate. They can carry in their bag. That's a win. A hydration drink that's low sugar. That's a win. And doing that intermittently during matches, before matches. So feeding yourself with foods so there's no foreign food you're eating all of a sudden and now you're sick. And then one piece of it is, which I see all the time at tournaments, manage your time between matches. Don't stand in the sun hanging around with your friends. While that's fun and I'm all for social, find some shade. Get in the shade and protect your energy. And if you're going to have a tough match in the next half hour to 45 minutes, and it's a very short break, find a place to lay down, bring a blanket, raise your feet above your head. But recovery for your legs, blood flow, elevate your feet above your heart. You can do it if you don't have a safe space or a shaded place. Go to your car, park in the shade, have your athlete or your child sit in the passenger seat and elevate their feet up on the dashboard for as much time as you can. So physical recovery comes in a lot of different ways. It's food, it's sleep, it's understanding you bleed energy just hanging around and being silly. When you're done with your matches for the day, sure, hang around and be silly with your friends. If you've got another match in a half an hour, go find a quiet place, put your earbuds in, listen to music that feels good for you. Create a mental environment that feeds recovery and regeneration.
No,
So it's a multifaceted approach, I think.
Yeah, and that hits on all the different areas of it. And you just have to, and the one thing I found too is once everything starts to happen, it's kind of too late. So you kind of have to do all this stuff leading in, eat and drink the right way. Like if you're starting to cramp or feel exhausted, it's too late for that moment. You still have to rehydrate, but that's why the preparation's really important. And in that vein, Paul, in college, what do you tell your players? What do you tell your players about managing the elements? Do you ever talk to them about strategically changing point strategy? Do you talk to them about, I remember going to Athens and cramping 2 years. Both years I went there, I cramped because it's so humid. Do you do anything with your players in terms of trying to get them prepared, either strategically, or do you try to keep the strategy the same and just do all the nutritional and rest and recovery stuff that Joel and Karen are talking about?
Yeah, the resources now are so good at many of these places, and we feel like we have it as good, if not better, than anywhere as well. Somewhat as elements, like we're in Northern California, and while it gets hot here, it doesn't get humid. And so it's not till May when we might have to go on the road for NCAAs, where we might hit our first bout of humidity, and that's going to be an adjustment for us in May. But all the things that I think you just said it, right? If you start feeling thirsty, if you start feeling tired, it's too late. And you really got to do the prep work in advance. And so we certainly talk about that. We're super mindful of it. One of the things about college we talk about a lot is, you're balancing a lot of different things where you're balancing your academics with your social life, with your tennis. And so the ability to sort of manage your time is a skill set that you learn throughout college, that benefits you for the rest of your life and in a professional tennis career really well.
Yeah, boy, it's amazing because there isn't a one size fits all, but there's a lot of different commonalities and little ingredients that if you sprinkle them in, it'll be really important. And one of the things coming into the summer that we just wanted to touch on a little bit is the pressure stuff that the kids will start to feel this summer for nationals, for the scouting, the environment, the expectation. It's the big stage for them. And in that light, Joel, a lot of these places you'll go to, and there's not a lot of space. There's not a lot of practice courts. There's not a lot of room to do their warm-ups in. There's not a lot of space to do what they want to do. What are the key elements in kind of a quick 10, 15-minute dynamic workout for a player, Joel, before they're going to play in one of these national tournaments in the summer?
For what we always recommend is make a 50-minute dynamic warm up, something to initially raise your body temperature. That's first and foremost. So you want to start that with a light jog or simple as skipping rope. We always have all of our players having a jump rope with them, and finding a space where you can do some side shuffles, karaoke's, anything to just raise your heart rate and get your body temp up. Second, part would be minutes 4 to 7, where you're going to do a lot of dynamic mobility, and that's where your walking lunges with rotation come in, your leg swings, world's greatest stretch. Everyone knows that, and getting arm circles, hip openers, and then that's the third part, which is going to be minutes, I want to say 8 to 11, split step hops. So specific movements that you're going to do on the court, lateral acceleration shuffles, and, forward sprint and back pedal, making sure that you have good balance with your single leg, and then maybe some quick reaction footwork patterns. Then you want to get ready to play the match, right? So you want to have little short accelerations with 10 to 15 yards, shadow swings. That's where those come in. Going through your checklist, your serves, your forehands, your backhands, and then finally it's just coming down to that your mental performance reset. So that's learning how to meditate, learning how to reset yourself. We always emphasize on inhaling for 4 seconds and exhaling out for 6 seconds. And then, that's what, good opportunity to review a game plan that you want, whether it's, you want to move your feet, you want to compete for every point. So the goal is to get mentally present and, emotionally ready. One of the things that, the kind of to sum it up, it's really just putting your body in motion, getting your brain going, and then getting your belief. So that's how I would approach.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know. Yeah, it is. And that, the thing, the last part to me is I'm a big believer in kind of the mind leads the body.
Absolutely.
And then I think with kids, we can kind of start to help teach them how to do that so that it works the right way. And in the summer nationals, especially, kids start to feel pressure, parents feel pressure. It can be self-imposed, it can be external, internal. And there's so many things that feel like there's so big a consequence that may or may not happen. Karen, in that vein of thought, expectation, consequence, potential things about college, scouts being there, rankings. What advice can you give parents about trying to quiet things down when kids get in this environment in the summer, in particular, leading into national stuff?
That's a great question, and I love it because it is a pressure cooker. The junior tour is a pressure cooker, and the things that add to it are ratings, rankings, parent expectations, coaches expectations, once what you expect of yourself. So to shield a player from all that, first of all, I kind of am rotating back to the mindset before you ever get to the tournament. Create a belief that it doesn't matter what a player is rated or ranked, because every area of the country is different. So a rating in one area is going to be different than a rating in the other. That's number one. And also matchup of games. One style may do well against a different style. So, but your style could do better. You just don't know. So you cannot put faith in ratings and rankings. So throw that out. That shouldn't be part of the thinking. And then a really important part is setting individual goals or intentions for each practice, for each match. You're here to grow and improve. You're not here to win the match. The winning is the end result of the effort or the process of what you're doing. So if we can get our athletes thinking process-based, I'm going to step in and take the ball on the rise. I'm going to take I'm going to work on my open stance. I'm going to stay low. A technique or an action to take when they're training leads to that thinking when they're competing, rather than, oh my God, I'm down 15, 40 and it's game point, or just these scenarios that go crazy. I'm going to focus on watching the ball. I'm going to step in, I'm going to take that return, I'm going to send it down the line, whatever they want to do. Focus on the action rather than the result. And I know that's always said, but if you stay in the moment of that, the pressure slowly escapes. And the last thing that was said I also teach yoga. So breath is so critical. And I was going to say 4-6. So I either teach a 4-6 or a 2-4, depending if it's a new student understanding breath, because sometimes they think I can't hold my breath. They don't want to think six points of exhalation. But a 2-4 for a beginner, inhale three, it takes 3 breaths. Deep gut, rib deep breaths to inhale and to release twice as long as as for the exhale. So it doesn't really matter what the ratio is, only that the exhale is twice as long. But it takes 3 of those to start to calm the nervous system down and to stop amygdala hijack, where your brain just cannot function because your emotions are now taking over. So breath keeps anxiety and stress at bay. That is so critical, and not enough coaches talk about it. You do it between points. You do it when you hit. You do it when you're sitting on a side change. No matter the score, you breathe, you process, you let your body settle. And this is the last piece that I'd like to add to that question. I give my students the idea of a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like, there's no pressure, you're fine. 10 being, I'm about to lose my head. So a safe competitive, if you're 1 to 4, you're not really primed. If you're competing between 4 and 6, you're probably spot on your game. If you're starting to escalate to a 7 of anxiety and intensity, which means quickness of breath, there has to be a ritual of turning to the fence, and players do it all the time. They go to their towel, they take breaths, they look at their racket. Everybody has something a little different. That's the time. Oh, I'm approaching a 7. I'm at an 8. I need to take it down to a 6 so I can play my game. So giving kids a measurable system to monitor where they are at any given moment in a match has been such a game changer.
Yeah, that's all. Those are all pearls of wisdom. Last thing for you, Paul. I think this to me is really important for parents to understand. And so educate us a little bit on your viewing and what you and the other college coaches look at when you go to nationals and you go to scouting. And people, look, we all know winning and losing. We know it's a meritocracy out there, but there are also some other ingredients. So I want you to talk a little bit about the other ingredients that you look at as you get to know players and their families to figure out if it's a good fit for college.
Yeah, I think the number one other ingredient that I'd be looking at is I go back to about 8, 9 years ago. Kobe Bryant gave an interview with Jameel Hill, sports reporter, and Jameel Hill asked Kobe, "Do you love to win or do you hate to lose?" And been thinking about that question for years, and I was always a hate to lose guy, right? To me, there's no wrong answer to that question, but I was always a hate to lose guy. To me, that emotion of hating to lose, you're going to do whatever it takes to not have to feel that again. And Kobe goes, "Nah, neither." And the interviewer sort of says, "Well, it's kind of a one or the other there, Kobe."
Yeah.
He's like, "No, no, no. Both of those have weaknesses to it. I'm a play to learn guy. I'm a play to figure it out guy." And he goes on to sort of say that's the way you stay present if you're playing to learn, playing to try to figure it out. He goes on to say, failure doesn't exist. And what he means by that is everything is experiential. And it's only a failure as if you're unsuccessful on Monday and don't show up on Tuesday and trying to learn from that experience. And so that is the other ingredient that I look for most. People love it. You talk about passion for the game. Michael talked about passion for the game, of course, but I really look for passion to learn, passion to figure it out. Um, the hard stuff is the good stuff. Those are the nuggets. You just got to be able to find it. And so that passion for learning, I think, is the number one other ingredient that I'd be looking for.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right. That's how I always, when I talk to parents, they always say, if it really is solely driven by the winning, man, you're putting yourself in a terrible position. Everyone loses every week except that one person. It's not a great ratio. I'm not good at math, but that's not really very good. You better figure out ways to get some really positive process-oriented stuff out of that. And I think that's a great thing about tennis is there's so many opportunities to play. There's so many opportunities to learn, and you can do it at every different level. You do it through the juniors, you do it as you get into college, and if you're fortunate enough to do it on the pros, you do it there as well. Listen, you guys, I've run way over. You guys are awesome. Jason, take over. This has been amazing. We could have gone for like 6 hours, Jason.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And the stuff that I really like is the fact that a lot of this is in our control, right? So sometimes our nerves may take over and we may not play the best level of tennis, but the stuff that Paul is talking about, the stuff that Joel is talking about, the stuff that Karen is talking, Michael is talking about, a lot of the stuff is within our control, right? So preparation, putting yourself in the best situation to win. These are the intangibles that the smart coaches are looking at, for those kids that are looking to play D1 tennis, D2 tennis, D3 tennis. So a lot of this stuff is in our control. How we hit the ball that day is kind of 50-50, but the other stuff is in our control. So that, I think that should give some confidence to the players that are going out to playing some of these tournaments, is do the hard work and it'll ultimately come out in the end. But yeah, thank you to all the guests. I mean, parents, players, they do this out of the goodness of their heart. We are not compensating them. We are not paying them boatloads of money to be here. They're doing this because they truly care and they want you to get better. And we want Team SoCal to be well represented out there in the nation when you go out there and play this tournament. So thank you to all of you guys. Really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you guys on the court soon. And parents, players, feel free to come up to any one of them when you see them at the courts, and be sure to thank them for their words of wisdom. So with that, we will wrap it up and have a great rest of your Wednesday evening. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Good luck out there.
Thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.